Welcome, everyone, to Christiana's Psychic Café. I'm so happy that you're here to join us. We have an amazing show here tonight. I am so happy. We have two great guests. The first is my friend Marcy Currier. I'll be bringing her on in just a moment. She is a tarotist. She is a comedian. She is just an all-around great person, and she's going to be sharing with us. She's also an artist. That's why she's in the artist corner. She's going to be sharing with us her new tarot deck that she's designing. If you've never seen a tarot deck in the process of design, I think you'll find this really exciting. In the second half of the show, we'll be welcoming Lourdes Starshower. She's a tantric healer. So we'll be talking first about tarot and later in the show about sexual healing. So I thank you all so much for being here. I could tell you so much about Marcy. I've known her for years. She is one of my most successful tarot students and also one of my best friends. But rather than doing that, let's just bring Marcy on and let her tell us about herself. Hey, Marcy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Terrific. So it's so impossible to describe who you are because you are so many different things. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask you a series of questions and let us get to know you that way.
Okay, that's perfect. I think that's the best way to do it, yeah.
And let's start with Omega. Now, I think most of the people here do know about the Omega Institute, but maybe not everyone. So let's start with, tell us about Omega.
Okay, so Omega Institute is I think it's the largest holistic retreat center in North America. And I've been working there since 2007. I started out, just really quickly, 2007. I am mildly miserable working as a social worker for kids in therapeutic foster care. I go to the Omega Institute with my son for vacation. It was, I think it was our third summer taking a trip there. And started talking to some of the staff. And day one was like, this must be a cool place to work. Day 3 or 4 was like, I wonder if I could work here. And by day 6 or so was like, yeah, I guess that's what I'm doing. So in 2007, I very abruptly, within a week and a half, left a 5-year, fledgling career in social work and went to live in a tent at Omega. And I was working on a different tarot deck at that time, and that was sort of part of what led me to just say, you know what, screw it. I need some time. I just want to get this project underway. And that one's more on hold right now, but I do have another, after you see this deck that I'm working on right now, there's another one that started it all, that's still there. It's still waiting in the wings. So,
waiting in the wings, that's a pun, isn't it?
I guess it is.
So now you work at Omega. What do you do at Omega?
Okay, so the first year I worked there, I just did a lot of tarot readings for the staff and kind of really made a name for myself on campus, found an identity for myself on campus as a tarot card reader. Everyone would have their nickname, and it would be, so-and-so dining hall or so-and-so production, and that would, it'd be their name and where they worked, but mine was always Marcy Tarot. And I think I started a little bit in 2008, began teaching some staff workshops, doing some tarot card readings for guests through the wellness center there. And now I teach a monthly class for people that are there on R&R, Intro to Tarot. And it's an intro to, my particular style of how to use tarot and what we can do with it. And then I usually teach some staff classes, often an intensive where it's a 24-hour, over the course of a month, 24 hours of intensive tarot study. And I work, 4 to 5 days a week doing tarot card readings for guests. So it's great. I get to meet hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world. It's just, it's really fantastic. And Omega really was the place that got me solidifying my identity as a tarotist, as a healer, as an artist. All of those things started to come together at Omega, and I think I'll probably not ever be separate from that beginning there, you know?
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Now, your actual tarot studies began, of course, in New London, Connecticut. Not with me. I was not your first tarot teacher.
That's true. That's true.
But you did study with me for a few years, and I remember dragging you out at midnight to go read for graduation parties.
I remember you had said, so you're kind of a person that'll, you know, do little odd things for money, right? And I was like, yes. And, you know, you threw out that idea of, well, I do these grad parties, and here's the catch. It's in a bowling alley, and they usually go from around midnight to 5 a.m. And I just remember being like, oh, well, all right. And I think, honestly, something that's really helped make me successful is that gameness, like oh, yeah, sure. And that was my very first paid gig. And I think it might have been the first time I ever took money at all for tarot readings. I don't think I'd ever done like a one-on-one paid session or anything before that. I think that was the very first time that I made money doing tarot.
Yeah, so, I think they call that trial by fire.
Yeah, I think that is what you call it. Just, whoa! Yeah, I think that's what you call it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you do also tarot events in your local community. In fact, you're joining us today after doing something, yes?
Right,
what did
right.
you do today?
Tonight was Tarot Gallery, and this is another thing. I forgot about this. This is another thing that started at Omega. And it started out really simply. Basically, whenever I had free time, I'd say, okay, I'm going to be over here. I'll do some tarot card readings and just come on over. You know, you get a reading for a minute or two and we'll, you know, move on. But quick questions. And what happened, kind of to my surprise, was that while I was reading for some people, other people would say, can I listen in? Can I hang out? And if the person who was asking the question didn't mind, I didn't mind. And so it would form like a little crowd. And honestly, like to this day, because I've never experienced it, I've only been the like reader, the provider. I'm never sure what exactly is interesting about this process. But people love it. They love it. So I do this every Wednesday night at Omega, and decided to try it in my own. You know, I work with this art gallery nearby, and so tonight it was called Tarot Gallery, and I just have my little table and my cards, and then there's an audience of people, and they just take turns asking questions. I'll be doing it in New York City sometime soon, probably sometime in March too. So it's great because it's now that I have the format down, I know how to do it. I know what to invite people up front, you know, what to do. I tell them to don't ask what. If you don't hear it, I'll repeat it. Don't worry about it. If you missed it, then deal with it. But you know, what's amazing about it, and you know, if you've done gallery readings, like
I do, yep.
You're talking to one person and 7 other people go, oh my God, I get it. You know,
right.
And I love that. I love the magical quality. I like the compassion that's developed when you hear another person kind of bare themselves a little bit and ask something that makes them vulnerable. And I like the fearlessness that's required of someone to say, I'm afraid, or, you know, I have this question, I'm confused. And to be able to say that in a group setting takes something special, and it really creates a nice environment for those readings. So that's one of my favorite things I do, yeah.
Well said. Very good. Now, I also know you to be the mistress of wonderful costumes. There's some fun pictures on Facebook. I spared you and did not send them to Eric for him to show to everyone. But I will comment on that. And that was I had no idea that you were an artist, that you could draw, that you could do those things until you came to one of my galleries. I think you got there at the very end. I don't remember, but you were Medusa with gold snakes in your hair.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. Yeah.
And that's when I discovered that you were creative. And then at some point you started showing me your pictures, and it was the pictures from the tarot that will be your second tarot deck. Can we talk about your second tarot deck?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And I don't know, I want to bring Eric here for a moment. I've got Marcy's face frozen. Nicely, Marcy, don't worry. You're frozen with a pretty good expression. But we're going to need her video to show some pictures. What do we do, Eric?
She's moving. She's just fine.
Oh, she's moving. Okay, as long as she's moving, I can't see. So just when you show pictures, Marcy, remember that the host cannot see. So don't tell everyone else that it's one thing and then fool me and tell me it's something else. Don't do that to me.
Okay. All right.
Oh, so so you've got some drawings with you, right?
I have drawings of my frog deck with me.
Okay.
And then I have my tarot drawings are relatively accessible if you want to see those. And
the butterfly. Okay, so tell us about both. Tell us about the butterflies and tell us about the frogs and show us both.
Okay, so the butterfly tarot was the first thing that started. What happened was the tarot started teaching me kind of on its own, and you know how this is when you stop learning and it just starts teaching you and showing you things. And one of the first things that was revealed to me over time was how the development of a butterfly from egg to caterpillar to chrysalis to butterfly corresponds precisely, so precisely with the arc of the major arcana. And so that's what gave me the idea. And I mean, butterflies are wonderful. They've always been a power animal of sorts. They're definitely a guide. So that's how it started. And, I've always liked to draw. And so I think I remember talking to you outside of a coffee shop. And you were like, well, you were like, this is like the culmination of the skills that you have. You're good with tarot, you're good with art, you're good at writing. I think you have to make a tarot deck. And I know at the time I was like, do you think I could do this? And you were like, yeah, I think you definitely can. But I remember that feeling of like, I never really feel that way anymore. That kind of questioning is possible for me. I don't really experience that level of, I don't know. There's a difference now. Where now I have an idea, I'm going to take it, I'm going to go do it, and if it works out, it does. That's great. But I don't. I never feel like, oh, do you think I could try this ever anymore? And it started there. It started with like, yeah, you better just do this. This is like obviously something that you should be doing. And then so I brought those with me to Omega and worked on them at Omega a lot. And actually, at some point, they were lost. And I thought that the original butterfly tarot drawings were lost and never to be seen again. And then recently, I think it was when my grandma passed away, we were kind of looking through some stuff, and my mom found, and she, my mom very offhandedly, here's this portfolio of yours. And in it was like this treasure of, hours. I can't even tell you how many hours and hours. They're huge. The drawings are really big. So just not, they're relatively big for pencil drawings. But hours and hours and hours of my time, passion, and energy that I thought were gone forever came back into my life in the past, 6 months or so. So that was exciting.
Wow. Yeah. So what are you going to show us? Do you want to talk about the frogs first, or do you want to show us some butterflies and then show us some frogs? It's your show. Tell me what you want to do.
The butterflies, but I have to run, grab them, and come right back. Is that okay?
Yeah, that is fine. Absolutely.
You can keep everybody entertained. I'm literally going to run. You're going to see me run, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Very good. So what did I tell you? Is Marcy not fabulous? Wait till you see her butterfly drawings. And what she'll tell you, she'll show you some of the butterflies, and then she's going to show you the frogs. Now, the mystical frogs are going to be the ones that are going to be published first. And I remember when she told me about this, I was like, butterflies, then frogs, what are we doing? I didn't really quite get how that was all going to work. But tonight she's going to show us the butterflies, and she will introduce us also to the mystical frogs that have already been contracted by U.S. Games. So as soon as she's finished with those and they get printed, we're going to be able to get our hands on those. And I might have mentioned when I promoted this last week, I don't like cute decks. I don't like the Gummy Bear Tarot. I don't like any of those cute decks. But these frogs are adorable.
And, I don't like cute decks either.
Right? Right?
But I love my frogs. And so I'll show you, and you're going to see that these are two very different drawing styles, which is kind of interesting for me, just to have such wildly different kinds of art come through me. So just really quickly, I'm going to show you partially done aces, and the original, like what I was putting together for the back of the butterfly deck, and we'll look at it very quickly. So this is just the kind of the start. This is the back. So this really captures. It's vibrant. It's bright. These are not dainty, floppy butterflies. These are vibrant, bright, powerful, moving through the world butterflies. So this is the Ace of Pentacles, and the concept is that I'm not using pentacles. It's more the element. So this is the Ace of Earth butterfly, and then so you see we've got the sunflower and the butterfly. You can guess which element this one belongs to. Are we still here? I'm still here. Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
I can't see them. My Skype just showed me a picture of you. So, but everyone else, I'm actually looking at the chat room, and everyone else can see them and are saying things like, "Wow, lovely," and "really gorgeous."
So, oh, good, wonderful. So that was the Ace of Water, Ace of Cups. And it's funny to look at these now because my understanding of tarot has changed so dramatically in the past few years. I've changed so dramatically in the past few years. My drawing has changed so dramatically. It's hard. I know they're beautiful, but it's hard not to look at them and grimace just a little because they would be different if I did them now, and that is the neurotic artist part of me talking, and I'm quite aware of that. So finally, this is the Ace of Swords or Air Butterfly. So that's just a kind of a sampling, and it's much more fine art than the mystical frogs. It's definitely more labor intensive and definitely more time consuming. But also, I think because it was the first, there's something about it that comes from a very, very deep place inside of me. That it's very meaningful. The frogs are meaningful too. They are quite meaningful. But there's something about that. When you have your initial endeavor, there's a certain bond with it that's different than, the frog started out as a side project, so I didn't go crazy thinking too hard about the butterflies. And then I had like 3 or 4 psychics that told me that I would do the frogs first, and I was like, oh, whatever, you guys are crazy. And then, of course, here the frogs are with their very own publishing contract, and needing to get done pretty quickly around here. So
Yes, they are. Now, there's a question, before you show us the frogs, there's a question in the chat room. Mashael wants to know briefly how your view on tarot changed from when you started with the butterflies to looking at them now. Can you briefly describe how your tarot view has changed?
Sure. I think, God, it's changed so many times between then and now. I think it just continues to evolve and evolve and evolve. I know that I went from understanding it as the way that you would read a book, or the way that you would learn about something, so like an external thing that you wrap your mind around. And then over time that turned into, it's just tapping into this wisdom that's bubbling up out of me. And then I also have gone from a very serious take on everything to a much more like, you know what, however you want to look at this is fine with me. I don't, like a much less rigid idea of what each thing means. I still have the rigid idea, but it doesn't matter as much to me, if that makes sense. Like I still have very specific ideas about, what each card means and how to understand it. But I'm also much more excited than I ever used to be about the varying, meandering interpretations that different people have.
Perfect. Okay, so the frogs. Show us some frogs.
So I'm going to show you the 4 aces to begin with. And actually, I'm going to show you the world card to begin with. It's the most fully realized one. I'm happy with it, which is saying a lot. And so they're in frames because they've been on display at Omega for a little while.
That's nice. Not everyone can say they had their art on display at Omega.
That is the truth. So let's see. I feel so lucky and blessed to be a part of Omega. I'm actually going to take it out of the frame because I don't want there to be a glare, and also because the frame appears to be broken. So we're going to do this. Okay, so this is the world card for the Mystical Frog Tarot. And so you'll see it's a little bit different than the Rider-Waite world card, but also very quite similar. We've got each of the 4 elements in the corners. Oh, you can't see it, can you?
I can't, but I've seen the world card. You've shown it to me before, so I have it in my internal vision.
This is one of those, it's online, and if you Googled it, you'd probably find it. It was also in an edition of Marcus Katz's Tarosophy a while back, and that's actually what prompted me to get it done. Was he was doing the whole book was about the world card, and I said, okay, I can do it. So that's, and I'm going to put it a little closer. So what I'm doing is letting people see her little face. I love her little face.
I love her face. That's why I love these frogs, is their faces are great.
I love her little round bottom. I love her feet. And there's something about them, and I always know that I've hit it when it seems like they're moving. That's how I know that I've gotten it. Because when I'm going to show you some kind of like what the process looks like when I'm working on the cards, and you'll see that when I first start drawing them, they're flat and they don't look alive, and something happens in the process where they just come to life, and that's when I know that I'm in that channeling place, and it's not just me trying to draw a picture, which it never really happens. That I'm actually getting out of the way enough to let the frogs come to life. And that's literally, that's exactly what it feels like.
Wow.
So do you want to see the aces, or do you want to see, what would you like to see next?
Show us the aces.
Okay. Great. So, all right. So first, I'm going to show the Ace of Pentacles. Let's see. I think if anybody in the chat room says it's glaring too much,
there's no glare. Just like that, you're perfect.
Okay, great. So that's the Ace of Pentacles, and it's got. I'm really passionate about reminding people that like the pentacle and the element of earth are the same thing. They're synonymous. So what you're going to see is that there'll be the little icon, but there's also going to be a representation of the element very strongly in each of the aces. So next we have the Ace of Cups. So it's a very, it's a pink, the cup is like a little pink lotus flower with water splashing out of it, a rainbow behind it. And, in the aces, how they have a hand that reaches out. Right. In the Frog Tarot, it's a little frog hand. Which is just a cute little touch that I didn't think of. I honestly didn't think of it, and then was working and then was like, oh, it's a frog hand. Okay. I think exciting things about the project is that I literally discover stuff after I've already done it, where I go, oh, look, a ladybug, or it's. So then we have the Ace of Swords. Actually, let me do this. Nope. Sorry. Okay, sorry.
I got to tell you, people in the chat room are loving these cards. Getting a lot of kudos in the chat room. Just wanted to let you know.
So this is the Ace of Swords. This has changed a lot. I'd said that thing about wanting to make sure that the element is represented, and it was initially tough to represent air, and I decided to represent air with these vivid yellow swirls. So on my swords cards, you'll see vivid yellow swirls, and you just have to know that they represent air.
That works.
The way it goes. And then Ace of Wands. This was the one that took me the longest to figure out what the hell does a wand look like in the Frog Tarot. And I have, sketches upon sketches upon sketches of different kinds of, and you wouldn't think it would be that hard, right? But it is, or it can be. So this is the Ace of Wands, and again, you'll see the little frog hand reaching out. So those are the aces. Those are the most fully realized of all the cards. Actually, that's not true. I do have, if you go to either facebook.com/frogtarot, or if you go to frogtarot.tumblr.com, you can see the first 7 images that I submitted to the publisher. And what's funny about that is that because the frogs have evolved as I've been drawing, I probably am going to have to redo those before I'm done. Because for me, it takes work to get to keep the proportion consistent. Like, okay, how big are their legs? How big is their head? How long are their arms? That takes a lot of effort on my part. It's not something that I'm naturally gifted at. So when I look at the old version, they just they're a different species almost of frog. So let's see. The other thought I had, so I've got some sketches I'm working on that I was thinking about sharing with you, and you can kind of see how it evolves. And then also how, sometimes when making a deck, you can put so much effort into a card and then realize it just doesn't quite work. So I'm going to show you that too.
Okay.
I said that so this is the 2 of Cups that I'm showing, and you guys can see that. Do you see that, Eric?
Yes.
So you'll notice that there is a flatness to this that does not, it's not as alive as maybe the World card, or the Aces even. Even the Aces have movement. So when I first start drawing, it's like stick figures. It's a bunch of stick figures. And then as I work with them, they start to move and have more form. So here's another one that's in partial process. This is my 9 of Pentacles. I'm in love with her. And again, I'm going to show you the card. And the things I wasn't expecting that showed up were the little ladybug on her foot and the flower on her head. And, it's one of those things, I think I've drawn this card a few different times. And every time she ends up with a flower on her head. I don't know why she has a flower on her head, but she does. She's one of my favorites. I just love the pose. I love how comfortable she looks. It really sums up the 9 of Pentacles for me. And then I'll show you so this is an 8 of Wands. And I guess I could even invite anyone that's in the chat room to vote, because so this is an 8 of Wands. And what we have is, instead of the very traditional 8 of Wands where the wands are just by themselves moving diagonally across the page, we have the wands are arranged in a circle around a frog, and the frog is bursting through the center. And it looks like the frog is on fire, and people aren't happy with that. Neither am I. And then 2, I just think that it is perhaps too strong of a deviation from what people expect from the 8 of Wands. And I'm torn on it, because on one hand, I don't feel compelled to keep it the same as the Rider-Waite or Rider-Waite clones. And then on the other hand, I do not want the meaning to change significantly. And I also don't want to alarm people into thinking that the frog is being harmed, because he's not. No frogs were harmed in the making of this.
Well, so far in the chat room, we've got a couple of people who like it. Joanne says bursting through with action. She likes it. The Yeti likes it. If the Yeti likes it, we're all set here. So you're getting some positive reactions to it in the chat room.
Oh, wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that I thought of, but I basically have my whole studio here available. So, I have the paper I work on, I have the pencils I'm using. I have an enormous file box of a draft of every card that I have worked on, because I save them. I save my papers for when people want them. The Library of
The Library of Marcy. Let's do this. In the interest of time, let's do like this. Obviously, as I'm looking in the chat room, everyone is enjoying this. And I think, everyone here joins me in wanting to encourage you to bring all 78 frogs to life. And I know this has been a project that's taken a little time because, well, you're doing so much else in your life. But why don't we have you back, say, in a month and a half, and you promise to show us some brand new drawings?
I can definitely do that. That sounds great.
Will that be some good Marcy accountability?
I think it will, yeah. That sounds wonderful.
Well, very good. Let me just check the chat room. There was one other question in the chat room. Oh, and everyone is excited to have you back. Oh. So why don't we talk about maybe the end of February, beginning of March, we're going to want to see some new drawings and see how the frogs are evolving. And there was one question in the chat room, will the deck come with a booklet or a book or something to help people learn? So it could be a deck for a new person.
I think at this point, it's a little white book. But I certainly have enough to say, and the frogs have enough to say that I'm sure, provided it's successful enough, and it's not up to me. But if the invitation was provided to me, I would definitely take up, any offer to do a booklet or, a small companion. Absolutely.
Beautiful. And yes, Marcy can also write. She can do all of these things, and she's a good writer. So, Marcy, it is so great to see you. It is so great to see the frogs and the butterflies. I want to thank you so much for being here. We'll have you back in about a month and a half, so get drawing.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Marcy. You be good.
Christiana.
Take care. Okay, I can see in the chat room that everyone enjoyed Marcy as much as I did. But don't go away. Our next guest is equally beautiful and equally wonderful in a completely different way. Now, I have a film clip of Lourdes dancing with fire on a rooftop. Have you ever seen a beautiful woman dance with fire on a rooftop? Well, you will now. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And I am very pleased to introduce Lourdes Starshower, who's joining us here today. Hi, Lourdes. How are you?
Hi, Christiana. I'm well, thank you. And you? Excited to be.
Well, it's so nice to have you here. Now, we're not here to talk about fire dancing, but I just wanted to comment on what a great video that is. And can you just tell me in a short little snippet, what is it like to be on a roof dancing with fire?
Oh, it's incredible. Fire dancing is really great for the third chakra because fire is the element for the third chakra. So it's very empowering for women. And being on the roof and looking down at all the people, and it was such a gorgeous place because there were trees all around and people were very excited, and a good audience always makes for great fun.
Absolutely. And you know, when I first met you, I'm trying to remember, I believe I first met you at a drum circle, and then you brought your daughter to a pagan circle that I was leading. I think that's how we became friends. Is that right?
So she was your friend first, yes.
Right. I was friends with your elder daughter first, and then she came to some of my classes, and I met your younger daughter. And so initially, I always thought of you as a belly dancer, a fire dancer, a drummer. When did the Tantra studies start for you?
The Tantra studies started for me in the very early 90s. I was trying to conceive Kiara, as a matter of fact, with my ex-husband, and I had him on timing, some of the women who've worked to conceive probably know what I'm talking about. He got a little bit uncomfortable with being at my beck and call and not my beck and call. And so I found Tantra at that time as a way to really juice up our relationship and make the whole conception thing much more fun and exciting. And so that was the early 90s, and I've been studying it ever since, but studying to become a teacher just in the last 5 or 6 years.
Right, and that's really when I started to know you. Now, can you explain? I think most of we Westerners don't really get, and in fact, I don't think I really get what Tantra is. When I think about it, I think about sex, but I imagine there's a lot more to that, and I know that you teach group classes of singles and men and women, and I'm sure you're not all having sex in those classes. So tell us what Tantra is, first of all.
Tantra is creating a connection and interweaving between your sacredness or your spirituality and your sexuality, so that we use our sexuality to catalyze our spiritual growth and our spirituality to make our sexuality more sacred. And it's also an interweaving of the inner male and female. And it's the most beautiful connection that you can have with a person because it's highly loving, highly spiritual, highly connected, highly intimate, and fun, and juicy.
And juicy. Now, the one Tantra class I ever went to, it was at a festival where I was teaching. And I was sort of in passing. I was only able to be there for a few minutes. But what was happening was people were gazing into each other's eyes. Can you tell me about what that process is?
Yes, it's actually gazing into the person's soul through their eyes. And the left eye is the soul eye, and the right eye is the personality eye. So we gaze a little more into the left than the right, but we do look into both. And it's so complex. It's so multidimensional. It can be as simple as just really connecting with a lover and feeling when you're making love that you feel this magnetism and this fire between your eyes that makes it much more intimate, loving, and powerful. But it also is a great healing experience. I'll just tell you a moment in my recent history of working with a client. It was a client who came in, and he was well-versed in Sanskrit and knew the chakras by name. He could tell me clearly what Kundalini is, and yet he had never had any experience of Kundalini or whole body orgasmic bliss. And so I talked to him a little bit about what we were going to do, and I said, let's start with eye gazing. And almost in the moment that he began to look into my eyes, his body began to do this sort of waving thing. His eyes opened up like saucers, and his head did this like whipping thing, and he said, what was that? And he had this first Kundalini experience just looking into my eyes. And now that's very extreme. That's not the norm. But many, many different things can happen. My first really powerful eye gazing with a woman was when I was looking into her eyes and I could feel that I was healing my mother, my grandmother wound, and any past female ancestral wounding that I had had. So it's just whatever the person needs can be healed through another person's eyes.
Wow. So all of a sudden, I'm hearing that Tantra, we've got all the sacred sexuality pieces, but it's also an opportunity to heal everything that we've carried with us. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely, yes. It's an amazing healing experience. In fact, the pujas that are what I'm doing regularly, about once a month, sometimes more, in Palm Beach County, are a circle of men and a circle of women facing each other, and the women will move from station to station, from man to man, and each experience is different, and it's all about healing each other by connecting with our eyes, connecting with our hearts. There will be different things. Sometimes it's dance, sometimes it's putting your hands on a certain chakra and sending healing energy, the men massaging the woman's feet, and all of these beautiful experiences are all about healing from the opposite sex. It becomes a transpersonal experience. So that really any man could face any woman and they could heal a myriad of past experiences with the opposite sex if they're really present.
Wow. Now, okay, true confession here. I find, and I think this has a lot to do with what I do for a living, where I am sort of constantly looking at people and looking into their souls and doing a psychic reading. But I am somewhat uncomfortable and vulnerable with the idea of people looking into me. Do you find, say, your first timers, the people that come to those first classes, have a hard time with that vulnerability?
They can, and it's very rare that people have a really hard time, that they get triggered, so to speak. It's happened, but in 2 years, it's really only happened once where somebody really had to leave the room because it triggered something for her. But the way that I begin the puja makes it really safe and sacred for people, and that is I do some work with imagery and with breath to bring everyone into their upper chakras. So we're transmuting the energy, bringing it up, doing a group connected breath, holding hands, sending energy and heart love around the circle. And so by the time we begin the Tantra, people are very comfortable, very relaxed, and they're already in tantric presence, so to speak, which is a state of bliss and a space of non-self-consciousness. And that's really, if I were to explain what tantric presence is, it's a deep spiritual state of awareness where you are connected to everyone's heart. In other words, you're in namaste. Namaste meaning I honor that place inside of you where you are, when you're in your place and I'm in my place, we are one. So the divinity inside each other, and we're in that place already by the time we begin. So people are so touched, and they cry, but they cry sometimes, and they cry when the healing takes place.
So, I can imagine if you say that getting out of that place of self-consciousness where most of us live most of the time, I would think that would be so helpful in people's sexual encounters. If I'm not worried about how fat my tummy is, so that would be part of it. Now, you have an event coming up. Your teacher is coming. Is that correct?
Yes. My teacher, my third teacher, and my current teacher is Charles Muir, and he's from Hawaii and California. He's currently living in California in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Boulder Creek. And he and his assistant, Leah Alchin, are coming to teach beginner-level Tantra workshop on April 19th, 20th, and 21. And I'm still looking for a location, but it's going to be in South Florida, somewhere between Palm Beach and Dade County. And they call it a beginner's weekend. However, although you can come in as a beginner, you're not going to feel like a beginner when you leave, because it's really juicy and it's jam-packed with experiences and information that will take people to the next level, including learning how to do sacred spot massage. And there is no nudity and no sex in the class, but the men and the women are separated into two different rooms for a couple of hours on Saturday and a couple of hours on Sunday. And on Saturday, the men are learning how to do sacred spot massage through a video and through instruction, while the women are with Leah in another room learning how to be great receivers and learning what to expect and learning how to really speak their truth and honor themselves during the process. The following day, vice versa, the women are learning to give to the men. And there's a beautiful process for the women to choose, if they choose to, it's optional, which man they want to work on them, if they're single, or they can choose not to. It's truly an amazing experience.
Wow. Now, clearly, Lourdes, you are very able in your career to be able to talk about these things in a very open and frank way. Were you raised in an environment where you could kind of talk about sex and talk about sacred spots and all of that? Is that how you were raised, or is this something you had to learn?
No, in fact, I'll tell you a funny story about my upbringing, and it was very repressed. I was Catholic Cuban, and, Cuban girls didn't do it until they were married, supposedly. And we were about, my sisters, I have a sister 1 year younger and a sister 1 year older, and my mother heard us say the word fuck. We picked it up from somewhere. We had no idea really what it meant. And the way that she handled that is she had us each come into her bathroom one at a time, and she asked us, what does the word fuck mean?
Okay, let's not use that word. Let's call it the F word.
I'm so sorry.
Eric's going to kill me now.
Sorry, Eric.
No, it's a good story. Go ahead. Carry on.
We each had the same answer, which was, what did he say? I didn't hear him.
It's a good story. Carry on. You're doing fine.
Okay, so we each had the same story, and we all described the man kissing the woman's private area and the woman kissing the man's private area. And my mother listened, and then she said, okay, you're done, next. And we never talked about it again after that. And then when I got my period, my mother said, well, you have to be very careful now not to get too close to boys. And I was like, what is that? So anyway, I grew up in a repressed culture. It took me years to come out of that. During my marriage, I was very like most women, meaning that I had one kind of orgasm, and that was a clitoral orgasm. I could only have it during one type of sexual position, which was me on top with our legs straight. This is during my entire 20 years of marriage, or if he stimulated me manually. Those are the only two ways. And this is quite common for women. It'll be completely different, but every woman has this one or two, most women have this one or two ways. I'd never had a vaginal orgasm, or heaven knows a cervical orgasm, or an oral orgasm, meaning when you're giving oral sex, or an orgasm on my foot when somebody is holding my foot, or an orgasm just by kissing. I have I was cataloging them at one point, all the different types of new orgasms I was experienced as I experienced my sexual awakening, which has only happened within the last 6 years since I got divorced.
There's the end of that story. But I suppose you could also tell that story as you have really come into the study of Tantra. I would assume that's part of it too.
Yeah. Yes. Because after I got divorced, then I really got into my right livelihood and started diving deeply into Tantra. And a lot of what has happened for me is actually the healing that has taken place with my lovers, because I've been involved in serial monogamy, and most of the men that I've chosen, because this is what I asked the universe for, I said, universe, bring me great, deep love and great sex. And that's what I started to manifest. And I started to manifest these incredible tantric men. And that's when I chose to study Tantra, because I could feel, the first time I was with a tantric man, I got out of bed and I went to go to the bathroom. And I was dizzy and my feet had lost their footing and I could barely walk. And I looked at him and said, wow, what is that? And he placed his finger on my clitoris and just held it just on the surface of my clitoris like that. And my whole body went into bliss. So this is one of the things that happens in Tantra. We teach people how to become a better receiver of energy and a better transmitter of energy, because Tantra is all about energy. It's not about friction. So when a person opens and awakens their chakras and their kundalini rises up their spine, all of their powers, their chakra abilities become heightened and more expanded, as well as their ability to feel pleasure. So for me, there was some healing that needed to take place in my sacred spot that happened during some of these experiences with lovers, but mostly once I started to study with Charles Muir, when I started to get G-spot massages from experts and from colleagues during classes. And then I had base massage, which was hugely powerful for me in terms of expanding not only my ability to feel pleasure, to open up my Amrita, but also to heal my base, which is all about connection to the earth, security, prosperity, abundance, grounding, family. So I know I just said a lot. And we can dive into some of those pieces if you're interested. I bet a lot of people don't even know what Amrita means. Shall I tell you what Amrita?
Yes, by all means, go ahead, and then I have some questions for you. Go ahead.
So Amrita is female ejaculate, and it's a sacred elixir, is what they call it in what it actually means in Sanskrit. And all women are capable of it. Most women have never even heard of it, have no idea that it can happen. It's incredibly powerful. It comes down from the head at an energetic level, down through the body. And when you have it for the first time, it feels like it's a natural flow of a river flowing through you and out. That's really our birthright. And it really feels like it's supposed to be there when it first happens. It's so joyful and incredible and powerful. And we can awaken, sexual tantric healers can help awaken that in women, and so can really conscious men who learn how to do this work, can learn to awaken it in their own women.
Wow. I mean, of course, I've seen movies, where there were particular stars that were able to do this in these certain kinds of movies. But I thought it was sort of a sort of a thing that some people could do, but not all. But you're saying that all women have this ability.
Well, I hesitate to say all women, but my thought is that it, like the way we think that anyone can dance and anyone can sing, and it's really there's some blockages in the way. And but with Amrita, there's not. I don't believe there's a talent like there is with singing or dancing. I believe that every woman can eventually have it happen. It's a matter of opening up blockages. And if we grew up in a culture that celebrated it and that knew about it and that honored it, then of course many more women would be having it. Just like many more women would be having beautiful, comfortable, natural childbirth if we grew up in a culture where it was accepted and honored and women were taught that they could. And right. And some of us do because we believe we can, and some of us unfortunately don't.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat room right now. And at this point, I am going to open up the phone lines. If anyone would like to talk with Lourdes, if anyone has a specific question, 615-692-1262. Give a call and ask Lourdes. As you can see, she'll talk about anything. Now, in the chat room, first of all, people are really appreciating you, really enjoying the show. So we all thank you for being here. And there's a question about female to female and male to male. How does this work? We've talked about, we all have male and female energy within us, and we've talked about men connecting with women. But what about women connecting with women sexually and men connecting with men sexually? How does that all work? Do you have workshops specific to that? Yes. Can you address that?
Because you cut in and out so much, I could barely hear the question. I heard the beginning of it. You want me to talk about male to male, female to female. And what was it at the end of that question?
Well, just exactly
Whatever.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, exactly. We both have an inner masculine and feminine, and the tantric belief is that as we are evolving, our inner masculine and our inner feminine will balance themselves, balance each other out. Balanced human being, whether we are male or whether we are female. And some people believe that you have to mate with a male if you're a woman in order to have polarity, in order to have tantric polarity. But as I have seen in some of the couples that have come through my classes, sometimes two men and sometimes two women, a beautiful experience can happen with two women and or with two men. And it's really all about their connection, their love for each other, the way that they look into each other's eyes, the fact that they honor the god or goddess inside of each other, the fact that when they make love, they have this sense of truly loving this person and touching them and kissing them and making love to them as though they are the finest person on the planet. And that's really what Tantra is about. And when you hone it down, so it works. I've seen it and it can be beautiful.
That was beautifully said. So we're actually coming to the end of our hour, but Eric has said we can continue on, so let's continue on for a few minutes. Again, our phone number is 615-692-1262 if anyone would like to call in. And my question, if you don't mind, we've talked a lot about classes, but I know that you do work with couples, you do one-on-one work. Without invading any privacy, could you share a little bit about that?
I do one-on-one work, couples, individuals, men or women. And typical couple experience, it really depends on what they're coming in with. Sometimes she has issues with pleasure or ability to have orgasms. Sometimes he has issues with ejaculatory control, premature ejaculation, or erectile dysfunction. And if that's the case, then I would prefer to see the two of them individually first and do some healing around their specific individual personal issue and then see them as a couple. When a couple comes to me and they say everything is fine with us, but we want more, or they say, you know, our sex was fine, but things have gotten in the way and children and work, and now we're just sort of like, our sex has gotten ho-hum, or we barely have it anymore, and we want juice, or we want to experience higher levels of what's possible. Then in either case, after the man and the woman individually are healed, or whether they come in at that level, then I work with the couple, and that's a beautiful experience. I start with connecting them with each other, with eye gazing, with words of affirmation and love, and with energetic. I teach them how to connect energetically, which is very, very powerful. I bring them into tantric presence and into connection with me. And then the gentleman and I will massage the woman. And when we're finished with her, the woman and I will massage the man. And this includes a beautiful sacred honoring massage on their back to raise their kundalini, expand their chakras, open them up, make them fully relaxed as well as erotically aroused. And then when we get to the front, we're teaching them how to have whole body bliss waves, which means we're pleasuring the sacred space. The woman's is called the yoni, which stands for sacred space. That's the G-spot inside, but the yoni is actually the external as well. And the man's is called the lingam, which means wand of light. So for either one of them, we are massaging and pleasuring them with 4 hands, which is really, really powerful. And we're also having them breathe as they come into high states of pleasure. And this breath up the spine and down the front of the body that I teach, and there are many different breaths that do this sort of orbit that creates the complete filling of all of the chakras and the sexual energy to expand, so that a person feels pleasure in their heart, in their throat, in their head, in their fingers, in their feet, and they start to have these whole body bliss waves. And so I've gotten to a point in my experience and training right now where the majority of people, even if they've never had bliss waves before, can have their first ever feeling of ecstasy in their whole body under my care, which is really exciting.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds it. And all of a sudden the chat room's gone dead. Everyone's, wow.
And so then with men, some men, you know, if they have ejaculatory control or they have premature ejaculation, then there is this similar process. We are helping them to feel whole body bliss. If all of the sexual, and for instance, a man who's a premature ejaculator, if all of the sexual energy is only felt in the second chakra, in the lingam or the wand of light, or vajra, which means thunderbolt, then it's easy for a man to have an ejaculation very quickly when he becomes very excited because it's all right there and it just bursts out. So if a man wants to slow that down, we pleasure him, and then I pleasure him if he's by himself, and then we breathe together. And we do that as a goal. We set 3 times to be able to breathe together, and then I keep pleasuring, and then we breathe together, and I keep pleasuring until they learn, and sometimes it's in one session, sometimes it takes more, until they learn how to have this feeling of whole body ecstasy, and then all of a sudden the ejaculation does not have the power over him that it had before. He's feeling pleasure in his whole body. The pleasure is dispersed. It's still in his lingam, but it's not just there. And so that serves 2 purposes. It gives a man eventually ejaculatory control. And it allows a man to have multiple orgasms. That is not only something that women can do. And of course, women who aren't having it, we do the similar thing to teach them how to have whole body orgasms. And one more thing I want to say about when men have ejaculatory control is that it is so powerful for both the man and the woman. Because if you can imagine, the man can be inside of the woman for as long as she wants. It can be an hour or more if she wants it. And then when she seems completely satisfied, or if she's getting tired, he can say, "Darling, would you like me to come now?" And she can say, "Well, yeah," have his orgasm, his ejaculation, if he wants to. Meanwhile, he's already hopefully had several orgasms as well. And a man can learn to not have ejaculation and still have multiple orgasms and use that energy, that creative elixir of life, that life force energy that is the most powerful life in a man's body because it's meant to give birth. And he can recirculate it through his body, which is something that the Taoists do. Mantak Chia is very, very popular with teaching men this, and so is Charles Muir, my teacher. And it teaches them, it actually is rejuvenating for them and healing for them, and it gives them more energy. So at the end of a lovemaking session, if a man has not ejaculated, he's still very connected to his partner. He doesn't become exhausted and drained and roll over and separate from her. And so it's really valuable and powerful for the couple for many reasons.
Okay, wow. You know, there's a lot there I didn't know. So there's some stuff going on in the chat room. Let's see if we have a couple of questions here very quickly. There was a question about Viagra. I'm not finding it here. Hang on one second. Okay. Hey, I guess this should help with older guys who think they need Viagra. What do you think? It could be done instead of medication.
I absolutely love that question. I couldn't hear the last part of that.
Oh, just could this be a replacement for Viagra?
Yes. And I don't love Viagra. And the reason that I don't love Viagra is that, well, in my limited experience of it, which was when I was married, it kept the erection for a really, really long time, but it didn't do anything for our connection. And it didn't do anything for his ability to be present with me and giving me love and connecting with my eyes and my heart. And it wasn't much fun because it wasn't much fun in the first place. So Viagra, yeah, it can make you last for hours, but you know, like that's not the whole picture. And it's a crutch, and men don't necessarily need that crutch because they can learn through a certified Tantra educator or a tantric. That's what we're called when we study under Charles Muir. But there are people who study with other teachers as well, can learn how to have a stronger erection, how to last longer, without using Viagra. Now, I will say that sometimes I have used hypnosis when I have a man who has premature ejaculation or who has erectile dysfunction. And there are other modalities that tantric healers can use besides just pleasure and breath. And sometimes there is something in a past life or in childhood that has made a man this way. And sometimes it's actually enculturation, so to speak, or programming. I'll give you one example of a man in my practice who came in saying that he would enter his wife, and the minute he entered his wife, she would be rushing him to have his ejaculation. He would be rushing to have his ejaculation, and he would ejaculate right away. And so it was both people who had this sort of enculturation and or habitual response, habituated. So I worked with him individually, and it was very complex, but in a nutshell, I opened up her yoni so that she could receive more and more pleasure and enjoy having longer time of pleasure and not fear it, not have any internal anxiety around being pleasured or having her husband inside of her. With him, I did hypnosis and tantra, and I helped him to, I took an exercising event, which is what I asked his subconscious to take us to, never knowing where it's going to go. And we found two things. First of all, we found that his early sexual experiences were very, very rushed, that his mother had found him doing the big masturbation, which I call self-pleasuring. I think it's a much nicer word. But she found him doing it, and she shamed him for it, and she said, well, hurry up and get that over with. And then he one time overheard his mother and father in their bedroom, her telling her husband, well, hurry up and get that over with. So what does he grow up with? This idea that actually is not uncommon in our culture, that you get it over with quickly.
Right.
So This is what he was doing. So combining her healing, and then giving them homework. And their homework was to go home and take their time and see how long they can enjoy each other without any pressure.
Right.
And the results were beautiful.
Right. Wow. That really brings home. That's a good story. I'm glad you told it. It really brings home how we are conditioned. And so often, I think whatever culture we come from, we are not conditioned to understand the sacred nature of sexuality. It is something that you got to hurry up and get over because it's really unpleasant. It's like an unpleasant necessity.
That unpleasant necessity can happen for a myriad of reasons. I mean, one of the things that happens is in long-term relationships or marriages, unfortunately, in very long-term relationships, is that the partners have built up walls. And those walls actually are blocks to intimacy. And it's about not telling the truth all the time, being afraid to speak their truth, whatever other walls happen between partners as a result of what's happened in the past with them, and that blocks intimacy. And so what you find is two people who, if you really dove into their secret desires, would love to be having incredible sex, but are not approaching each other. And it's like, I remember this one story, this couple, I found this so fascinating. They came to me individually and they both told me the same story. It's like when their libidos collided, when the two of them, because neither one of them could move past this fear of approaching the other one. And so when both of them were very, very horny at the same time in the same place, they had sex. It was about 3 times a year. This is very sad, of course. I worked with her, I worked with him, and they began to have really great sex again. And so we talked about this possibly happening. Now, the other thing that can happen is that because of past sexual abuse, and a woman can have many, many things can be considered sexual abuse in relation to their ability to feel pleasure. And perhaps I don't want to label it sexual abuse, but let's say non-loving history So if a woman, for instance, had a boyfriend who sort of semi-date raped her, who sort of coerced her to have sex with him before she was ready, she can have some really unpleasant discomfort and numbness and pain in her yoni. Of course, if she was raped, if there was incest. But it can be as simple as being married to somebody who expected it and sort of used whatever sort of manipulation to get the woman to have sex with him when she didn't really want to, instead of honoring her with flowers and love and kisses behind her ears. Marianne Williamson says something really beautiful, and I can't quote it directly because I don't have it exactly, but it's something like this. If a man could kiss a woman in just the right way, in just the right places, with loving intent, it could do a huge amount towards world peace.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant.
Yes. So part of what I teach men, I call it gentleman coaching, but part of what I teach men is how to approach a woman. How to open, well, I heal his heart too, because tell you, one of the things that I see the most in my practice is men whose women have said no to them. Women have no idea how much that hurts the man. But that's how men receive love. This way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Okay, only partially true. The way to a man's heart really is through loving him, sexually loving him. And the way to a woman's heart is too. But for a woman, you have to go through the heart first. For the man, you can lovingly approach the lingam without necessarily bringing flowers or saying love words or telling her how much you appreciate her. But so men come to me and their hearts are hurting and they have no idea. Men are not aware that their hearts are hurting, but they're shut down, and I can feel it because I can read the energy from the chakras, and I can see it in the way that they talk to me, and I can hear it in their words. And so I do energetic work to heal their heart, and they go home to their wives and there's more love in their eyes. And I also teach them how to look at their wives, how to touch their wives, how to hold their wives in this presence, how to slow down, how to touch with the intent to feel pleasure in your hand as you touch. So that you're not just touching somebody, but you're touching somebody. It's huge different qualitatively.
Absolutely.
And that's what women want.
So is there anything, I know that Eric has had your website on the screen, but is there anything else you want to promote while we've got you here? Why don't you say the website while we've got you, and anything else you want to promote?
Certainly. My website is www.tantrahealerflorida.com. My meetup group, which we meet and we have pujas, which is that sacred ceremony that I described earlier, of great beauty and people healing each other through heart connection. And I have them about once a month on this meetup. And you can go there at www.meetup/sacred-tantra. And if you forget, you can go and look up Sacred Tantra in Palm Beach County, and you'll find it. I have about 317 members or something like that right now, so it's the biggest one in the area. And two events that I want to promote that are coming up. A very dear friend of mine, brilliant astronomer, also tantric healer from Colorado, is coming on February 8th, and he's going to host a zodiac puja and trance dance in West Palm Beach at Groovolution Studio, which is the studio where I do most of my classes. And that's on my meetup. Well, it's not yet, but it's going to be soon. That's my job for tomorrow. And my teacher, Charles Muir, my very dear and very brilliant and very gifted teacher who lives in California, is coming with his assistant, Leah Alchin, and they're going to be teaching a beginner tantra weekend, April 19th, 20th, and 21, and that's on my meetup right now. So I would love for people to, if they can't afford private work, to come and join my meetup. And they can also go on to sourcetantra.com. That's Charles Muir's website. And at sourcetantra.com, they can click on the little sunshine in the beginning and on the homepage, where they can get 3 free gifts. And they can go into workshop calendar and find the beginner weekend that's happening here in April. They can click on teacher training if they want to be certified and go that route. They can also click on find a teacher and find a teacher in most of the larger cities if they can't come to me in Florida. And I also do Skype and phone, but it's much more potent if you can do it live, if you have somebody near you.
Sure, sure. Lourdes, I want to thank you so much. We have had so much fun. I think people have really learned a lot, and I think you've really opened a lot of people's eyes, if not other places too. So thank you so much for being here. I want to thank everyone for being here on the Psychic Cafe. We will be back next week, 9 o'clock Sunday night Eastern Time, and we will have Kingsley Guy. He's an Egyptologist. He's just written a novel about ancient Egypt that shares a lot of Egypt's spiritual lessons. And I think you'll really enjoy him. Okay, you may not enjoy him as much as you enjoyed Lourdes and Marcy, but you will enjoy him, I promise. We will see you next week. Thank you so much for being here. Namaste, Lourdes. Namaste, everyone. Good night.